All right, let's get right into it. This is Smogon Drama Alert. This is drama from the last month of Smogon that I think is funny and cool to cover. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in. First off, we have a matchup in World Cup of Pokemon semifinals from about uh, early July of this year, where a player on US West disconnected very early in their SVOU matchup versus a player on Italy. So the circumstances of the situation are very, very important. First off, uh, these two players had contact before the game, and uh, the player who disconnected uh, pretty explicitly said, "Yo, my internet is pretty bad. Uh, if I disconnect, can we do a recreate?" And the player from Italy agreed very enthusiastically, and in fact contacted TDs about either tournament directors about either turning off the battle timer in this instance, or in the fact that there would need to be a recreate if this was to happen. Um, so there was initial disconnect right here, which is considered to be the main point of disconnect, but then there's another one over here. And since this player has under 60 seconds, the way tour policy works is if you have a certain like amount of time left on your battle timer, like if you have under a certain amount of time on your battle timer, um, and you disconnect, it can be ruled as a normal timer loss and not a disconnection. What this is meant to do is it's meant to de-incentivize just pulling your router out if you're low on time. Um, but in cases like this, it really, really blows for the person who disconnects. So people are talking about how the initial disconnect right here is the main disconnect because while they did reconnect and clicked a couple of buttons, they disconnected right afterwards again. But even aside from this, the fact that there was communication with TDs who allegedly informed both of these players that that would be doable and fine, that's another pretty big sticking point in this situation. All right. So what happened after this? All right. So the player from US West, the player that disconnected, went to Starbucks and got a matcha latte, hoping for a replay. The player from Italy here wanted a replay. Um, the TDs scrambled for a bit, and eventually gave the decision to the entire Italy team to make whether they wanted a replay or not. Um, and Italy decided to take the win as opposed to replay it. Now, it is pretty important to note that realistically, under tournament rules, a replay shouldn't have happened because gentlemen's agreements don't actually mean anything in terms of tour policy, right? So the fact that there was a disconnect under their threshold for normal timer, which isn't revealed so that people can't game the system, but it's assumed to be around 60 seconds. Um, the fact that there was a disconnect while this player was under 60 seconds implies that there should probably be a normal timer loss, right? But because of all of the extenuating factors, and I think because the TDs wanted to save face a little bit, they gave the decision to Team Italy, which Team Italy obviously great, like very readily was like, yeah, of course we're taking the win. It's a World Cup of Pokemon semifinal, obviously. So this was led to a bit of drama. Surely got US West in a not great spot mentally, and Italy clinched the win right afterwards. Um, and a lot of things ensued after this. Um, lots of uh, a lot, a lot of like stuff was getting leveled at the TDs, which I, on the whole, do sympathize with and also support, because it really does feel like a situation where these TDs are trying to deflect the blame by giving the outcome of the situation to the team that would obviously pick the outcome that benefits them. As in, what I mean by that is no one should be blaming Team Italy in this situation, right? Instead, we should be blaming the TDs for one, not calling it the way that it should be tour policy wise, and two, deciding to deflect the blame in spite of the mitigating factors that were mentioned earlier, including the fact that a TD actually said that it would be fine, allegedly, right? Um, and yeah, the game was still very much in contention, obviously. You see the Wake is paired. It's a Sun matchup, but their biggest wall breaker is gone. The Moon and the Sinistra is very like potent towards their team, and the Moon is at full in like with facing Sun. So anyone who says that this game is over is completely delusional. Most of these five mons are at full. This Wake is paired, even though like there's not much chip on a lot of stuff. The Hatterene doesn't have the eject button and is at half, and most of these mons are just gonna Oko. So like anyone who says that this game is over is fucking deluding themselves. But that's a different story, right? Um, yeah. So there was a lot of disappointment, especially from the player on US West, because they haven't really had many important games that they played recently. Um, as they said, haven't been able to play a proper game in a playoff setting in the past 2 years, and this just kind of compounded on that frustration, which I completely understand. Makes plenty of sense. Um, and yeah, now, and US West is understandably very mad, not only at the situation and how it transpired, in spite of all of the mitigating factors and whatnot. Um, there, there's just a general level of frustration with both the TDs, uh, well, pretty much the TDs for how this situation played out. This is a post by the player on US West that ultimately lost the week deciding game, and yeah. But you know, a consolation is that Midwest US Midwest beat Team Europe and won all the World Cup of Pokemon. So good for them, and on to the next bit of drama. All right. Not a lot of people know about this metagame. It's called Cap. Create a Pokemon. All right. It's a meta with fake mons, some might say. That's played pretty much based off of OU's ban list. Now, Cap, like most other meta games, has a PL, so Cap Premier League, and this is a game that occurred in week 7 of Cap Premier League. All right. Um, Essentially, there was an early disconnect on turn 7, just like in World Cup of Pokemon. And ooh, there's me. And there was not only a disconnect loss, but also a timer loss in this series. And it's important to note that this game was played on the main server, play.pokemonshowdown.com, as opposed to smogtours.psim.us, which is the normal server that's used for major tournament games. Um, so yeah, there was an early disconnect. They or not early disconnect, a timeout early in the game. They claim that it's the other player, Inafable, claims that turn up over here, or sorry, turn up is over here. That's Inafable. Inafable claims that there was a Wi-Fi issue. Uh, Not on the forums. They also claimed that they were connected to Showdown on both their computer and on their phone. So and their computer disconnected while their phone didn't, and that's why I didn't show a disconnect message. And that's what they claim. And Turnup is an incredibly good sport and said, yeah, sure, let's recreate it. And the tour host at this time was not online. They were asleep, woke up, saw the situation, said that they'd make a judgment on it later, and went back to sleep, which I don't blame them for. at all. Like that, obviously, you can't really make a decision on stuff like this when you're you're tired and it's late. This was at about 5 a.m. my time, which was also 5 a.m. the host time. So I completely understand that decision. But what happened after that is that they recreated and they had swapped teams. They're on the wrong side. So when they recreated this in turn seven, Enofable had Turnup's team and Turnup had Enofable's team, which is very bad because they could see each other's sets, right? And this is again after a timer loss, not a disconnection loss. A timer loss is always, always, always ruled as a win for the other player as opposed to a disconnection loss. So it seems like a pretty cut and dry case at this point, but they do recreate one more time with the sides on the right side this time. Because again, Turn Up agrees and is a very good sport about it. And then eventually Enofable or Irene now wins after this recreate. And and says that they won. So then later on, during the day, but before this decision is posted, there was a lot of talk and discussion off of the forums about how this should be ruled. A lot of people said that because a game was played, as in like a recreate was done and the game was played out, that it should be ruled a win. Um, I fundamentally disagreed with that then and now because if a game shouldn't be played, then there's no reason for it to be ruled in the favor of the people that want it to be played, right? Like if you bring if you bring a banned Pokemon to a game in like Grand Slam and the opponent agrees to keep playing with it, that doesn't work. You still get DQ'd. You still get like that still gets counted as a loss, regardless. All right. And it's a similar situation here, that except in this case, it's a very, very cut and dry case of it is a timer loss. It is a timer loss with no indication on Showdown side that there is a connection issue. Um, there's also very, very clear precedent in previous matches where game recreates shouldn't even have happened in the first place. Um, Here, give me a second. The game will be ruled a real timeout, and there shouldn't have been a recreation in the first place in another very, very similar situation where there is a timeout and a claim of disconnection issues. So this win was eventually given to Turn Up over Irene, and this was very important at the time because it was week seven, the last week of an eight-team series, and at the time it put the No Fucks Great Tusks and the Golden Time Equilibris tied 2-2. If these teams tied, then there were other teams that could jump over the Equilibris for playoffs. Ultimately, the Equilibers did get to four, and the last game was a dead game, so they did make it to playoffs where they ultimately lost in semifinals. Um, but that's the second bit. And now let's move to the last one. All right, it's time. So, would you take a look at this list of metagames here under the SMOGON metagames tab? You see very, very obvious official tiers here, all right? Overused Ubers, UU, RU, NU, PU, LC, DOU, and Mono. All right. These are classified as official metagames. All right. So these are metagames that are used in SPL, World Cup of Pokemon, and SCL. Um, then we have NatDex, which is in a pretty unique case and is sort of separate from the rest of this system as a whole. And then we have uh, three class and Draft League, which is in a similar situation. And we have three classifications here: other metagames, unofficial metagames, and pet mods. Other metagames and pet mods are fundamentally different from the rest of these because they are based on non-cartridge mechanics. So, what I mean by that is for these nine metas, um, you can bring a team uh on the actual games, Pokemon Scarlet or Pokemon Violet, that would be the same as your team in game. So you could play on cartridge, even if you weren't playing on cartridge and you're playing on Pokemon Showdown. Other metagames like almost any abilities, stab mons, and balanced hack mons, these are the sort of things that you can't play on cart, and they're classified as other for that reason. Pet mods are similar in that it's in a way just modified things. Like for example, Vaporemon's adds moves like Peekaboo, the items like Tuffy Tuff, and stuff that obviously you couldn't get on cart. Then you have unofficial metagames, which are playable on cart. Generally, yeah, they are all playable on cart, but they're not considered legitimate enough as tiers or fleshed out enough as tiers to be classified as officials. So we have 2v2, NFE, Uber's UU, Zero Used, and AG. So ZU, AG, Ubers, NFE, and 2v2. You'll also see 1v1 here. 1v1 used to be over here in this list of SMOGON metagames outside of the tag of unofficial metagames. That's because it was counted as unofficial to an extent um, before what happened very recently. 1v1 was demoted from an OM to a, or not an OM, from an official tier to a UM, an unofficial metagame, because there was widespread collaboration between many high ups in 1v1 structures and banned users, permanently banned users. So, because of the leadership vacuum this left after they all got demoted, 1v1 no longer has the resources nor the leadership to be classified as an official, and um, definitely not the prestige at this point. So, yeah, 1v1 has become a and will pause traditional tiering and resource work since most of those positions have been reset. Um, I have to say, if you look through the list of 1v1 resources, I don't know if they're still up. They are. Most of these people, like Drip Legend, Bo Bobson, DEG, um, most of these folk are running every single resource in 1v1. And these are the guys that are kind of getting like banged for this because they are found to have cooperated with uh, such permaban users. From what I've heard from certain other people, the permabanned user in question is someone who was permabanned and is a known alter and active in non-smoke on discords, but uh, also with the caveat that they're not like a Lance or a GG fan type user, which those two are both different stories completely, but they're not really malicious in many ways while they are still alt users and very active on non-smoke on courts. But this is a huge shakeup because 1v1 is a pretty big tier, and 1v1 has always had a kind of a lot of controversy, lots of users getting banned for bigotry, lots of users alting, lots of users ghosting, and it's kind of been a meme in the Smogon community for a bit now, but this is like really insane even by 1v1 standards. Um, because this is reclassifying the entire metagame. And it says right here, 1v1 status is going to be reevaluated in the coming months, looking for a significant improvement in staff in the community as a whole. And if permaban users are knowingly allowed to continue to be a major part of the community, the tier and ladder are facing deletion, which is a thread that I've never seen used on my time on this website for sure. Um, and and yeah, this is the third bit of drama. 1v1 is gone essentially. It's in the gutter, and um like the whole tier is devastated now. because of how all the resources are put on hold and how many prominent users in the community are now demoted and no longer staff. That's the last one. This is the end of Smogon Drama Alert for today. I'll see you.